When I was younger, before everyone carried a phone in their pocket and parents could track their kids in real time, nights felt different. Quieter in some ways, louder in others. You had to entertain yourself. You had to go outside. And if you were anything like me and my friends, that usually meant staying out later than we were supposed to. I grew up in a small suburban town in the US, the kind where nothing ever really happens. Neat lawns, quiet streets, neighbors who wave but don't talk much. It was the kind of place parents felt comfortable letting their kids roam, as long as they promised to be home by a certain time. And for the most part, it really was safe. That's why what happened still doesn't make sense to me. There was a park about 2 blocks from my house. Nothing special. A playground, a small baseball field, a couple benches, and a patch of woods that wrapped around 3 sides of it. The fourth side faced the street, but even then, there weren't any houses directly across from it. Just more trees. It was hidden enough that adults rarely went there at night, which made it perfect for kids like us. We spent countless evenings there, riding bikes, sitting on the playground, talking about nothing important. We never thought twice about it, until one night changed everything. I was around 13 at the time, old enough to feel independent, young enough to still believe most things had logical explanations. It was summer, warm but not humid, the kind of night where the air feels lighter once the sun goes down. I remember that because it made riding our bikes feel effortless, like we could go forever without getting tired. Earlier that evening, a group of us had been hanging out at my friend's house. We were being loud, laughing, messing around in his backyard. Eventually his mom came out and told us to quiet down or leave. A few of the kids decided to head home, but 3 of us didn't want the night to end yet. So we grabbed our bikes and rode to the park. It was already dark when we got there, but the moon was bright enough that we didn't need the streetlights to see. The playground sat slightly elevated, almost like a stage, and that's where we usually hung out. You could sit on the equipment and feel hidden, like the rest of the world couldn't see you. At first, everything felt normal. We talked. We joked around. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant hum of cars on the main road a few blocks away. The park felt empty, but not in a creepy way, just quiet. Then one of my friends stopped talking mid-sentence. He tilted his head and said, "Did you hear that?" We all froze and listened. Nothing. After a moment, he laughed it off and said he probably imagined it. We went back to talking, but something had shifted. The silence felt heavier now, like it was pressing in around us. A few minutes later, we heard it again, a dull thump. It came from somewhere on the playground. This time, we all heard it. We stood up and looked around, expecting to see another group of kids messing with us, but there was no one. The park was completely empty. No bikes, no movement, no voices. We called out, asking if anyone was there. No response. We told ourselves it was probably just the metal playground settling, or an animal nearby. That explanation felt thin, but it was enough to calm us down for a moment. We sat back down. That's when we heard the voice. It was quiet at first, almost like it was echoing. It sounded like a child. It came from inside the slide. The slide was one of those old metal ones that twisted as it went down. You couldn't see straight through it, which made the sound feel even more wrong. The voice said something simple. "Hello." My stomach dropped. None of us moved. None of us spoke. We just stared at the slide. There was no way someone could have climbed into it without us noticing. We had been there the entire time. We would have heard footsteps. We would have seen movement. I finally forced myself to speak and asked if someone was inside. There was no answer. Thinking maybe a kid had somehow gotten stuck, I walked over and climbed into the slide. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I slid down slowly, bracing myself for anything. The slide was empty. I stood at the bottom and looked around the park. Still no one. No movement in the woods. No shadows running away. Nothing. I walked back up to my friends, trying to convince myself it was just our imaginations. Then the voice came again. This time it was clearer. "Catch me." That was it. We didn't talk. We didn't question it. We grabbed our bikes and rode as fast as we could back to my house. I don't remember the ride itself, only the sound of our breathing and the feeling that something was behind us, even though I never looked back. When we got to my backyard, we leaned our bikes against the fence and tried to calm down. We were whispering, afraid of waking my parents, replaying what had just happened and trying to come up with explanations that made sense. That's when someone knocked on the backyard gate. 3 slow knocks. I felt my blood run cold. I asked who it was, expecting maybe a neighbor or someone looking for a lost pet. A woman's voice answered. She said hello. Then she asked if we had been at the park. We looked at each other, terrified. I peeked through the small crack in the gate and saw her standing there, already looking directly at me. She was smiling, but it wasn't friendly. It was too wide, too still. I stepped back and said no. She asked again, like she already knew the answer. We said no again. She said okay. But she didn't leave. She just stood there smiling. We went inside and locked the door. My friends stayed the night because they were too scared to leave. For years, I told myself it was just a coincidence. A lost kid, an overprotective mom, a strange night that felt bigger than it was. I almost believed it, until years later, when I was older and living in a different part of town, and I went back to that park. It was early evening, still light out. Families were there, kids were playing, everything looked normal. But standing near the tree line, just far enough back to be unnoticed, was a woman, watching, smiling. I never went back again, and sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, I still think about that park, about how it felt like it wasn't empty at all, like it was watching us, and maybe always had been.